Hey everybody, it's time to Nefes and chill. In this video, we're going to be looking at multi-threaded rendering, which is a new option PC players got with the Elder Scrolls Online for them to enable to improve in-game performance via their hardware. According to ZeniMax Online Studios' lead graphics engineer Alex Tardif, in a recent interview, which is linked in the description below, the multi-threaded rendering is primarily meant to provide a much-needed boost to frame rates for those who are quote-unquote CPU bound. ESO is notoriously known as a very CPU-intensive game, more than it is GPU-intensive for many players, so this option theoretically should help with FPS and so forth. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing the game with multi-threaded rendering on and comparing frame rates to the game without multi-threaded rendering on. Excuse me, tongue twister here. On a side note, if you want to activate multi-threaded rendering, you have to turn it on in the in-game settings, in the video settings, either on the login screen or in the actual game itself after you load into a zone, and then you have to restart the game. But yeah, let's see what multi-threaded rendering has to offer. Also, on a different side note before we actually do it, I think the only issue I've had with multi-threaded rendering so far is that when I'm streaming, it does tend to lag out the stream or freeze my Streamlabs OBS, and it kind of like delays the stream quite a bit when I'm swapping characters. I think that this is kind of related to the recent bug or issue with the character selection screen and the login screen having a lot of stress on the CPU. But hopefully that's fixed, but that's pretty much the only issue I see with this option so far. For those of you wondering about my specs, I will put it on the video. I wouldn't say they're the best specs, but I would definitely also say they're not the worst specs. For those of you also wondering if you should turn it on, you should try it. I know a few players personally who have tried it, and they don't have as good of a setup as a lot of people do. And they said it still improved their FPS and so forth in trials and in PvP. But yeah, let's get on with the show. So, with maximum particle systems all the way up, with view distance to 75 out of 100, here we are in the city of Leowin. Kind of just strolling around, casting skills, taking the textures in. And the FPS is still sitting well above 100 FPS, even after loading into the zone. And we're just kind of sprinting around, trying to cause as much of an FPS drop as possible. Obviously, there aren't too many people here casting things, so we're going to kind of ramp it up here in a bit to either a more populated area or to a more active area here pretty soon. And now, we're in Vivek City, and while we were loading in, that was a freaky 499 FPS, but that's because everything was sitting still. And we're kind of going into Vivek City, arguably one of the most active cities in the Elder Scrolls Online for players to kind of craft and do their daily writs in. And even here, we're still kind of sitting at above 100 FPS, sometimes a little dip down to the high 90s, but that's really pretty much it. Nothing too major. Now for the next one here, we're gonna be following this Alikir Dolmen trait, and there are specific instances in ESO such as dolmens, hero storms, world bosses, or even like other instances in Overland where FPS drops are very common, and a lot of players tend to complain about it on the forums. Of course, the ultimate test will be kind of going to Zerodead, but if you watch my past streams, even the FPS in Imperial City and Zerodead just really never took a hit. Even when there's ball groups too, there really is, even before multi-threaded rendering, it's not too bad. And I'm sure with multi-threaded rendering on, it's going to be probably better in terms of FPS. But yeah, here we're not really seeing a dip below 100 too often. There's a lot of players popping off AoE skills, there's a lot of players spamming attacks. Lots of particle effects going on, and remember, this is with maximum particle system settings. You can definitely get higher FPS if you tone down some of your visuals. I mean, right now I have grass on Ultra, I have shadows on Ultra, I have maximum particle systems, 75 out of 100 view distance, and just kind of trying to just do a lot of stress testing here as much as possible in a short time. And we are seeing some dips to the low 90s or high 80s. But then, it kind of just settles down after that. So we're gonna go back with multi-threaded rendering not on. So this is gonna be pretty interesting to see. And already you can kind of see there is markedly quite a difference in terms of FPS. Obviously, for a lot of us players, it's not gonna be the biggest difference. I mean, unless you were playing at a much lower FPS, like it happened to me when I was playing on laptop and going from laptop to desktop. It's like, oh my gosh, I got like 60 FPS, and going from 60 FPS to above 100 FPS, that's quite a bit too. But here in Vivek City, we see that we kind of dip a lot low into the below hundreds. And here we're back in Leowen, and the FPS is similar, but we still see, you know, lower dips in FPS than usual. So there's definitely a correlation between not having multi-thread rendering on and having multi-thread rendering on for your FPS, even in, you know, passive locations such as Leowen. And then we're kind of back into the Alik'r Desert, arriving late to this Alik'r Domain yet again. And the FPS difference is quite big. I mean, 20 to 30 FPS at least, fluctuating up and down. It's quite a lot. And this is pretty much the same group. I don't think there's any amount of people that, more people that join. It looks pretty much the same group in terms of numbers and activity. Skills casting up, particle effects going up, AoEs on the ground. And we're dipping quite a bit low, and you know, once everything's settled down, we're gonna rise back up above the 110s, maybe 100s, and then, you know, this is the final boss. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a difference in FPS, and I would highly recommend for those of you on PC to turn it on if possible, depending on your specs, and just kind of test it out. And if you notice any weird, you know, issues like crashing or stuff like that, I would also recommend turning it off, because again, this feature is in beta according to the devs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching the video and hanging out with me. Thanks for Nefis and chilling, and I'll see you guys next time.